And we are live on LinkedIn. Cool.
Okay. I tried to flip my camera on TikTok because this is a little blurry, but you know what? We're just gonna
There you go.
we're just gonna go with it.
All right.
So, okay, great. We're all set.
Yes, we are. Welcome, everybody.
Nice to be doing this. I've been excited about it. So, Raquel, do you want to kick off with talking about what we're planning on talking about? I know we posted it, but what's the summary?
Yeah. So actually, Anna and myself, we met not too long ago, a couple months ago, and we found out we have lots of interest in common. One of them being a cultural shift in the workplace on how things nowadays are not what they used to be and how we can actually change them. And we have a really true passion about this. And so we decided to have these lives on LinkedIn so we can have a conversation, maybe answer questions, and have some thoughts on our what we see, what we think. Anna has a great perspective on the topic from an expert. And I have the perspective from actually being in that environment. And I think both of our passions and knowledge really complement each other. So that's why we're here, to talk about culture and the workplace.
Yes, and I think, something about people-centered work is that I'm always sad when I hear people say, particularly in leadership positions, but aren't we shifting towards more AI? Like it's a less human-centered. But I think that's really what's going to make workplaces stand out and is unique is the places, because since AI can do so many of what we call hard tasks, what are the soft tasks that still need to get done? And where's the labor going to choose to go? Is it going to be the place that's all automated without any consideration for human-centered work, or is it going to be the places that are still allow those human parts of us to thrive? So we want to start this first episode with talking about some of the unwritten rules of work. But to do that, unwritten rules really depend on who you are and your background. So let's start with introducing who we are, what our backgrounds are, or what you're comfortable with sharing, because they're different. They're different. And then I want to ask you what some of the unwritten rules of work are that you experience.
Okay.
But do you want to go first?
Sure. So I'm Raquel. For those on Anna's page, I grew up in Brazil. I have been in the United States since 2006. And I have experienced all kinds of backgrounds. I have been in the hospitality industry for most of my career. I have worked in 6 different cities, many different hotels, 6 cities plus a different country. And I've seen some things that repeat themselves wherever I go, and some things are a little different. In the hotel industry, there has been a big shift in the environment once the pandemic hit, and everybody talks about the pandemic and this and that.
Right.
And even though it's funny because, you mentioned, AI and how human skills, hospitality, that's 100% what we do is human skills, right? So it's interesting that soft skills are which we're good at. It's what actually now it's going to be needed if we get AI to do a lot of other things, right? So for example, I would say for us, for in hotels would be like chat services, right? So every time a guest chats somebody, it's still a person chatting back. It's not a robot. It's not an AI. I have not seen a hotel or a platform that actually has like AI doing that. So it's usually a person talk to another person. But on that side, so thankfully that the hotel industry is still very dependent on soft skills and human human beings, and how you connect with people. But I would say, as a female in leadership, there are the rules, right? Like the unwritten rules of that. I think in any field, you're going to get that. But in hospitality, there's still a lot of the women cannot be too loud. They can't really have an opinion. If we have a very conservative environment per se, because as the service we're providing is conservative, it's more traditional. They
What do
usually
you mean by conservative? Because that has a political connotation now. So what does that mean for you in a hotel?
Oh, no. In the sense of just traditional, more, for example, in luxury, there's new luxury and there's like old luxury,
Okay, like
traditional.
old money? Like old
Yeah,
money
something
stuff?
like that, right? So you walk in and people are dressed in they have they're wearing ties, and the women have heels. So just different how you present yourself, nothing
It's
related
not
to.
the Motel 6.
No, correct. Nothing related to politics.
Oh, I know, but just
Yeah,
for
just
the masses.
yes. So it's different what the expectations of the guests are, right? But you can still have that service and still have a very up-to-date mind on how to have a culture that embraces everybody's opinions, everybody's points of view. So it can be a little different, I guess.
I mean, arguably, it would even be better because then you could broaden your market, right?
Correct. And I mean, nowadays I don't even think a lot of people still want that stuffiness, right? I think that's when you think about like the white glove, and people, because we don't have connections anymore, right? Like, so one of the main things that people would really enjoy about my interactions with them at work, like a guest, would be the human connections that we have, right? I have
Mhm.
people at work that would tell me, like, you're so good with people. I was like, yeah, because I like people. I actually do like people. I want to talk to them. I want to have that conversation. And they are not having these conversations with anybody.
And that requires authenticity.
Correct. You
That
have to come on.
requires not being a robot because
Correct.
the AI has that covered.
Correct.
Um,
Correct. Yeah.
okay, so to summarize for anybody who just joined, because we have people popping in here, and I apologize that my phone is in the screen. This is because we did not realize the first time we go live via TikTok that I won't be able to add Raquel, but I can do that next week. So I know the quality is poor for y'all on TikTok, and I apologize. It'll get better. So Raquel is hospitality leader from Latin America, immigrant, and so very different experience now in the Chicago area, so the Midwest of the US, which has its own notorious norms of niceness, right?
Yes. Yes.
And then, so I'm very different. I'm from a very small rural area in North Florida. It's Taylor County. We call it Trailer County affectionately. It's a very, I'm part of a big white family, one of 8 kids, very blue collar area. Both of my parents went to college, but they are definitely in different class levels post divorce. So I have seen very different classes growing up. And then when I started college, I was like, I don't even know what these people are talking about. Like, this is a different breed of white people. I don't get it. People walk up to me and check my teeth because of my accent was much thicker. They just assumed I didn't have teeth because that's a redneck stereotype. So I just got more and more interested in it and certainly didn't expect to go to grad school. I worked after college before I went back. But once I went back to grad school and I picked a research interest, it was on social class and how people who experience social mobility navigate the workplace. And by my dissertation, I was like, there are unwritten rules and I'm going to write them down. So I'm curious to hear, when you think of unwritten rules based on your experience, can you name some of those?
Yeah. Even though they say they have an open door policy, the door is not really open. So it's not, even though they say, oh yes, we embrace every culture, we embrace all, everybody, but not really, because we're still going to make fun of you, or we're still going to say it's weird. We're still going to make like funny jokes about your accent or not. So things like that, right? So I think that um, it's interesting for me as a female leader to be coaching other female leaders, right? Because I have to, at the same time, be telling them that you need to be yourself and you need to stay strong on the things that you believe. There is still a game that we have to play. And in order to win it, you do need to know how to play it. And I have been, I had to forfeit the game a couple of times because I wasn't willing to play it. And that's just how it is. Like, even if you take gender out of it, if you go into, like if you change jobs too many times, right? That is seen as a negative thing, but they don't see the positive thing of it, right? So it's the whole, you can change your job because it's at will, but can you really change your job that often? You know what I'm saying? So those things that,
those consequences that aren't in the policies.
correct, that it says you can, but can you really? Nowadays, there is a lot of hotels have adopted and all of them call different things, but unlimited PTO policies, right? Where you can take an unlimited amount of time off. But is it really unlimited time off? You know, because in order for that to happen, you need to be able to take the time off. And to make it work, you need to be able to do that. So if you ask for 2-3 weeks off, are they going to look at you and say, well, you can't do that. You can take still just a week this year. So what is being posted is very different than what's actually being.
So it's interesting you say that about PTO, because PTO has been until recently, because that's becoming a trend these past few years, the unlimited PTO, that was something that was written down.
Correct.
You had
the amount of hours. Yes.
Days, this is the amount of hours. This is how many hours you accrue per check.
Yep.
And then it shifted to, it's not written down. It's at the discretion
of your leader. Yeah, that's
right.
it.
So that's interesting, because it's not just something that's assumed that is like cultural. That's something that was an intentional shift.
Yeah.
So I think that's something I hadn't thought of it that way before.
Yeah.
So when I think about unwritten rules, so I did a study on this. I interviewed Black and white women and men who'd moved up in class through their jobs, and I've posted some on some of what those rules are, both on my LinkedIn blog and on TikTok. And one of them is a shift from working together as a community to being very individualistic. And another is don't speak up. Even if I ask you to, don't speak up, just agree. And have you noticed any of those?
Oh yeah, that's exactly what happens, right? I'm not saying that has happened every single place I worked, but it has happened more than I would like to admit. That we do want to hear your opinion until your opinion it's different than ours. We want to hear what you have to say for as long as what you have to say is what we agree. If we don't agree, we don't want to hear it.
And did you notice it changing the work outcomes at all, or the organizational outcomes?
I think it hinders just anything, right? Because one of the main things I talk about, it's work-life integration, right? Not work-life balance. So if you can't be yourself at work, you have 3 hours of a day where you can actually be yourself. And your day is a lot longer than that, right? Like, so you need to be yourself consistently, not just for the 3 hours when you're heading to work and coming back to work, and you're like scrolling on TikTok, right? Like that, you should be allowed to be yourself all the time. And I think people are afraid of people's authenticity because they're afraid that people are just going to go absolutely insane and go say whatever. And it's like, most people are not like that, just FYI. Like, we just want to have a decent workplace. We just want to be able to voice our opinions. We want to be able to say that we don't agree with something that we see that is a problem. As a I don't know, I'd say middle level leader, but like, I've always been between most of my career. I was a department head, which I see what my team wants. I see what they need. I'm there with them all the time. And I bring something up. Oh, yeah, but we can't do that because the ownership doesn't want to do that, right? I remember when I was I think it was a supervisor. This was many years ago. And it's a great example of an unwritten rule, right? So we're sitting down and with the resort manager, and some of the people were saying some of the things that they want to change at the front desk. And somebody said, well, it would be nice if we can put a lock, for after hours. It was a really small property. And I said, well, that makes sense because we feel a little unsafe, right? Because the door, anybody can walk in after hours and we don't have security and all that. And the person just stared me down, like, just shut up. Like, she was just like, just stop talking.
Even though you were agreeing.
So later she comes to me and she said, well, you can't say that, because if you say that they can be afraid, that there's something for them to be afraid of, then now they can say that they feel afraid at work because you're a supervisor. So meaning that me voicing an issue, that it was a real issue, I could not do that in front of them, in front of the hourly associates, because she was afraid that they were going to say, well, I don't feel safe at work and now I can sue you for that. Like, they
But
already
it's funny because it makes the assumption that they hadn't already told you that.
correct.
Yeah.
And
It's that's kind of dehumanizing, because it's like, one, it's not believing you when you say it's been an issue for your team.
yeah,
But then it's two, it's kind of assuming the group is too stupid to be aware of their environment. Like,
correct.
especially if you have women in it, because we have to be aware of our safety all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
I worked in hotels and when you work in main city, so just people that don't know this, you never see a hotel worker walking in, because there's always an employee entrance. That it's never, especially in big cities, I can tell you, it's never in a well-lit environment. There's always in the alley somewhere. And at one point I said, when I hire people, when I hire females, I say, if you have to work the PM shift, which is 3 to 11:30, are you comfortable leaving work at that time to a bus stop or to your car? Because these are things that people don't consider. When they're hiring for a job, or when they're taking a job, that their safety at some point might be at risk, right? Like, I did not want to leave some areas through the employee entrance during certain times, and I refuse to do that. And the whole thing is like, oh, you're going to get written up. Please do write me up, because and that's the thing, I rather you do that than me getting anything done to me while I'm walking out.
Right, and violence.
Because you don't want me to walk through the front door, because that's going to look bad for a guest. So those are the things. And I think hospitality, it's all about unwritten rules. It's all about we do it because we do it, but we don't really, nowadays doesn't make sense anymore.
I mean, it's an environment that inherently has class in it.
Oh, 100%.
There's
100%.
who can afford to stay here, and there's who's working because they're paying for it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a lot of it's almost like the unwritten rules are things that I explained. It's the things that the majority group assumes are normal. And it may not be normal to subgroups in the group.
Correct.
And it's interesting you bring up in hospitality, a lot of the norms seem to be catered maybe towards men.
Correct.
Because it's the other safety considerations that women worry about were not considered.
Yeah. And not just men, but like men that have some type of money somehow, right? Like either they have their own car or, it's a different mentality. Another great example is housekeepers have a different background than, sales. The sales has, the front desk team has, engineering. There's so many departments within one building that is very clear what you do, right? So you have the very blue collar ones, you have engineering, you have housekeeping, right? And then you have the white collar ones, which is sales and marketing, and front desk is always in between. And they can't find their foot in there. So some things are acceptable for a team and like a certain amount of people, and the other one is not for the other people. And I've seen, and again, right, like I'm not pinpointing one specifically. I worked, just for clarification, if you look at my history, I've worked in over 14 hotels. So I've seen a lot. I've seen places that were very, very good with this, and I've seen places that were not so good with this. And the places where they're very good at understanding people in general, right? Like, and understanding that we are all here really to provide a service, and not so focused on what is specific for one group and not for the other, and making very distinct, change choices, I guess. The team in itself was much better. They performed better. The environment was better. Everybody came to work happy. We were there for each other. So you had better retention, better engagement, better results, more money, instead of just trying to stick with these rules that like are not there for everybody to see, and you kind of have to know what they are. Anyway, if that makes
So
sense.
I'm curious, in case we have anybody who is a leader listening in, whether it's LinkedIn or, well, probably LinkedIn, right? Or TikTok. What were some of the things that leaders did that was really effective in shedding some light on these unwritten rules, or even having unwritten rules that maybe were helpful?
Talk about them.
Don't leave them unwritten.
you make them notice, right? So I think when you shed light on them and you say, hey, I acknowledge, as a leader, I recognize them, and we're not going to do this, right? Like, we are understanding that this is not just, I hate when people say, oh, it's just work. It's not just work.
It's most of your day.
It's of your life. Like, if we're going to make effective change in the world, it has to start in the workplace. And this is what people don't understand, because that's
I
where
love that. Effective change starts at work. Yeah. Because it's the whole structure of our society.
Yeah. So I say, it starts at family, but family, we passed that a long time ago, because, we're not children anymore. And then school, and then college. But like, now we're the adults, and we need to make that change. And when the leaders, the top leaders of the company, understand that, that's when the shift starts. That's when you shed the light. I was like, you know what? We really have no females we say that we are all for diversity, but there is no Black people in this company or in positions of power. The females, they all look very masculine, because they have learned that they cannot be feminine. They learn that they cannot have empathy. They learn that in order to be in the top position, they need to be very masculine. And so when you shed those lights, and you be like, you know what, we do say we are diverse, but we don't have that. How can we improve? And they actually do the work to do it, to improve it.
So, and that's the thing about unwritten rules, is even if you hire diverse, but if you expect them to come in and do exactly what everyone else does, you don't get the benefits of diversity. You're not getting the new ideas. You're not getting people who might notice different mistakes. Like, that's like the McKinsey and Company has been doing a report for years on like, what is the value of diversity, and like teams that are not homogenous, teams that are heterogeneous, they make fewer mistakes, they make more money, they are happier. And you're not going to get that even if you have your token woman or your token Black person, your token LGBTQ member, if they don't get to bring those parts of themselves, one, they're not going to stay, but two, you also don't get the benefits of the diversity.
Yeah.
So we had talked about, though, you and I, off camera. Well, I guess on camera, because Zoom, because you're in Chicago and I'm in DC. But we had talked about that it's really hard to see unwritten rules for other people, because they're things that we think are normal. And so we had talked about that you kind of have to be an outsider somewhere in your life to groom that muscle of, like, I know for me, for example, having my teeth checked in college, right, had made me more aware of class. Of course, there's always the woman experience.
Crazy to me.
The woman experience. Well, I say the woman is not universal. Women are monolithic, but there's a marginalization there. I became more in tune with this is normal to me, but maybe this isn't clear to my students, or maybe it's not clear to the people I supervise. And I still miss stuff. I'm not perfect, but I really think that experience of being an outsider somewhere made me more aware.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what you think about that. And if you think how do you think it's possible to notice unwritten rules if they're rules that work for you?
Well, I think that because I have started new so many times, right? I've seen things that before they were acceptable and they're not anymore, right? And that's how the world works. Things that used to be acceptable, they're not anymore. And you have to keep up with that. We grow, we, evolve, and that's how it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I, I think that a lot of times, sorry, I got sidetrack in my head. I went in like
That's a big
20
question.
different directions.
I was pretty much like, how do we solve the workforce? And you're like, excuse me, I don't have a well-prepared answer. You're all good.
um Sorry, can you say it again? I really lost it.
How do you no, all good. So I asked, so since unwritten rules, when they're normal to us,
Yes,
they're
yes,
so
yes.
hard to see. So how is it possible to see them if they're
Again, you have to be aware of what's going on, right? Like the number one thing I do when I'm in the consulting and coaching business that I have, it's that I tell them, like, go after the information where the information is being given. TikTok, there's so many accounts about
Mhm.
how, like, workplace and how people are fed up with these things, of like how nowadays it's a meme, the whole pizza party thing, and
Oh, that's
how,
been a meme for years. Yeah.
but like, if you go after where the people are finding that information, where they're becoming aware of these things, right? That's
Mhm.
where you're going to find, that's how you can kind of look with the eyes of an outsider, right? Like, you're like, okay, so, oh, that's the joke they're talking about. Oh, that's what they're talking about, right?
Mhm.
We sometimes think they're like, oh no, it's working for us here. I did a whole article on how work is not family, and that's a good thing, right? Just
Mhm.
because it's okay, again, right? Like, because that's how we grew up. It was with the touchy uncle with the funny aunt that is the nosy person, the over, the people that make fun of you because you eat too much, because you don't eat enough, because you're not married, you have all of these
We have
things,
a family. No.
you know but I think the majority of people have been in families that they overstep their boundaries because it's family. So when you say that
Mm.
about a work environment and you say, oh, we're family here, no, we're not. You are not going to ask me about my private life if I don't want to talk about it. You should not be asking me all these questions about what I do after work and that. Oh, I'm just trying to get to know you. I will let you know what I want to know, what I want you to know, right? Like, so
Mm.
or like, oh no, we hug people here. I don't hug people, and I don't know if
Oh,
they're
I hate that one.
people.
I hate that one. Don't touch me without, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's not, you say the personal, that was another theme in my dissertation, was for some people they felt like work was more stiff and they were used to, in a more blue collar or pink collar environment, having more friends, and then
yeah,
everybody seemed really stiff. But then there was also and so that was usually like the white people who were like, everybody seems stiff. But I noticed the black people in my study were like, you don't need to know that about me. Like, are you trying to use this against me? Like, there
against
was more of a threat
correct. And
of,
I felt that like that many times. Like, I honestly don't like to tell people where I'm from, because the moment I say where I'm from, you can use that against me.
mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You can say
There's a
every
different
time
type of harassment for
Yeah.
immigrants.
Every time I say something that I am a little bit louder, oh, it's because she's Latino. Oh, it's because she's like that. If I'm late, oh, it's because she's Brazilian. No, nobody in Brazil can make it on time. So the amount of things that I had to do to overcome to make sure that I'm not the stereotypical, Latino or Brazilian or whatever. And mind you, we all know about Brazilian women and the stereotype on that. So I often don't even say where I'm from, because I don't want people judging me before they even get to know me. And
Mm-hmm.
that's another unwritten rule. The fact that you have to hide parts of yourself because you're afraid of how they're going to use that information against you and how you're going to play that game, you know?
And the unwritten rule for you based on your immigration, it's not race, it's ethnicity, right? That's how we categorize it, or?
Yeah, I would say it's more, especially there's something about with there's a meme a few years ago that I thought it was hilarious. The moment you say you're Brazilian, especially in the mind of a man, I start becoming this whole different stereotype of how what it was our government back in the 80s. They made this whole publicity of how Brazilians look like, which is not true, of course. That we all like, just dancing half naked all year long. Like, that doesn't like carnival happens for a week, for like 4 days out of the entire year. So it's not, the
We're not
parade.
always dressed in
It's not
feather.
all like that.
Yeah.
I've never been in a parade. So it's like, that doesn't happen. Right. And
Mhm.
but that is the idea. When I first moved here, and this was 2006, I was doing a J1 program, and somebody else like, "Oh, you have phones in there?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, I have phones in Brazil." Like, so those are the things, right? That I need to be comfortable in an environment to tell them where I'm from, who's my family, or just not who's my family, but like about me, because
Right.
I don't want that to be used against. Because I have seen that happen, not just to others, but to myself. That has happened to me. I've been made fun of my accent. I've been, and it's those are not fun. So you just learn to just deal with them, like in a sense. But when you are an outsider, right? Because that was the actual question.
I
A
was
lot
like,
of-
where are we going? I'm like, damn, this is because no, but this was good. This is important because, like
yeah,
we said from the beginning, the unwritten rules for you depend on who you are,
yeah,
where you're from. The rules for me as a white woman in America are not going to be the same for you as a Brazilian woman who has
correct.
moved here.
Yeah,
So, realizing them when they work for you. You mentioned TikTok and going to look for the information.
yeah,
And something I worry about is algorithms give us what we want.
correct. Yeah, that's true.
And so it's like you have to very intentionally be like, algorithm, show me something I don't
Yeah,
want to see. Show me the hard stuff.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean, another part of that is intentionally, I know that doing the research I've done, I didn't want to just do research with Black employees and not cite Black authors and not, and have, Black people on my committee and on my team and such, because I'm going to miss things.
Correct. Yeah,
I'm going to miss those things. And like very intentionally reading, like I know, this isn't anything novel. I think everybody knows who she is, but like reading Bell Hooks books, like life changing, on the experiences, particularly for Black women compared to other women. So I like that you said that about the TikTok, because it's like the information is it's there, but I just want to add, like, you have to very intentionally look for it when it's anything electronic, because I mean, even this live, like, this is going to show up to people who like already follow us, right? Like, I don't know who it's going to show up to that unless they're intentionally looking for
yeah,
stuff like this.
yeah.
While books, they're all, those are a little
Anybody,
less
yeah.
finicky. Go to the library. That's what we're telling you. The takeaway from this first episode is unwritten rules are harmful and should be written down. And
Yeah.
to learn them, you should go to the library.
Yes. And
Novel.
I think, it's having a genuine, and for any leaders listening, right? Have a genuine interest in making the world better. I think that that's it, right? That's great that you're making your money. That's great that you have your team. But have a genuine interest in people. Have a genuine interest in making the life of the people that work for you better. Because I would say this, no leaders only leaders because there's people following, period. If you don't have, I think one of the things that always made me very good at what I do is that I don't see, you can be the CEO of the company or you can be the housekeeper. I'm going to talk to you in the exact same way. I don't change the way I talk. I don't, and that scared a lot of my direct bosses because they knew I was not good. I would say exactly what I was thinking, but I've always seen that as a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because what people forget is that the CEO, it's only a CEO because there's people working for them. They're not the CEO of nothing. And people forget that you are only in the position that you are because there's people that are willing to do the job that they're doing, because otherwise you wouldn't be in that position, period. And when people understand that barrier, kind of collapse, and you're like, okay, so we're two human beings talking. What me, like, in the position that I have, what can I do for you to make your life better? Or how can I make this place better? How can I contribute to your life so you can contribute to the life of others?
And that's what you see that people are wanting to follow now, is
Yeah,
someone who has a
100%.
dedication to making the world better.
The
I see that
purpose.
too. I see that especially with the current workforce and the younger ones coming in, is there is more of a concern for the well-being of the world, both the planet and the people on it.
Yeah.
So
Hence us calling the purpose-driven workplace, right? Because it is. People
that
want
seems to be the
purpose.
shift.
They want purpose. That is the unwritten rule now, and the good side, that we want purpose.
That's true. And I think, and I grew up with a very religious background, and I'm not now. And I know that's taboo to say on LinkedIn, anything but the R word, religion. But something that I think has always guided me is growing up. When you grow up really religious like I did, you're supposed to have a vocation, right? Like you spend a lot of time discerning, what is God calling you to? And even though I do not view all of that the same way at this point in my life, I think I have carried that with me, of that if I'm going to do something for like 60 years
Yeah.
for 40 hours a week minimum, it needs to be meaningful.
Yeah.
And
But
I
this
think
is
whether
human.
you're religious or not, I do see that with like millennial, Gen Z, and probably Gen Alpha. We'll see.
Yeah. This is a human need that we have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the meaning of life. Everybody wants to know what they're living for, right? And when you have a purpose gives your life meaning. And that's what makes you wake up in the morning. That's what, it's not paying your bills. What makes you wake up in the morning, it's like, okay, so it's the hope, the underlying hope that you have, that that day is going to be better than the day before. So you
Mm-hmm.
have that. It's kind of like drives you, right? And if you have a meaning in life, you have a purpose in life, you can wake up excited to be alive, excited to go do the things that you have to do. And a lot of the things have shifted for me when I realized that the job I was doing no longer had meaning to me, because it was going towards a direction that I didn't agree with. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I shifted and I said, no, there's still something. It's an environment that I love. Hotels is an environment that I'm very passionate about. I want to make this better. I want to help people shift into that, to see that the direction the way they're going, it's not a good one. And we can shift to the other side, and we can make this a place where people want to be. Where I remember when I first started, I, like, as a front desk agent, I did not want to have days off, because I love my job so much and I just want to be at work. I want to be there. I want to talk to people. I was so in love with it. And I
Mm-hmm.
haven't felt that in many years, because it has shifted. It became just how can we squeeze more money out of people, and out of guests, and how can we offer the least amount of things for the most amount of money? And I know a lot of people might be listening to me right now. It's like, well, that's not true. It is true, and we all know this, that we are everybody's understaffed. And of course I'm generalizing, which I don't like generalization. There are hotels that are not like this, okay, just let me make that clear. But the majority is, everybody I talk to, they're understaffed, or they say people don't want to work, and I'm like, yeah, who would like to work in a place like this?
I think the IO psychologist in me also always limits that while we are squeezing money, as you say, many organizations in my experience, I've been an external consultant. I didn't really go into my experience. I've been an external consultant for a public, private, academic. A lot of them don't measure the cost of turnover, the cost of poor performance, the cost of counterproductive work behaviors, because people hate you and they're lashing back.
Yeah.
And those are also things that, it's like, when you have pizza and you eat pizza and you're like, that's so good, I'm going to have another one. Maybe that second one feels good, but if you eat so much, it's not worth it anymore.
Yeah.
Like the rate of return goes down. Like, oh, you're just sick. Now you don't want to eat pizza ever again.
Never again.
Right. And I feel like there's a rate of return with as you said, squeezing money out of people. Of maybe there's a little shift that you could make something more efficient. I am a project manager, so I'm like, oh, I love efficiency. Also German ancestry. We love efficiency. But, there comes to be a point where you're working against yourself.
Yeah.
And because people can't tell you without getting reprimanded what they think about it, you don't know, but
Yeah.
like office supplies is going missing. They're clocking out, they're leaving earlier than they're supposed to,
Or
or
they're lingering so they can get some OT because they
right,
can't get enough hours. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
right. And I mean, if you're not aware enough to know that they're upset or what the rules are for them, are you aware enough to notice all of those little things that are adding up?
Yeah. And
So,
they do it up. They definitely do it up. And it's so sad because even as, and I'm sure that some of the leaders that are listening, they have been in a position where they've been telling their superiors, like, this is not working. I need you to change. And there's so many good people out there. I
mhm,
want to make sure I say this too.
mhm.
Especially in the service industry. We go into this industry because we like serving people. We don't
Right.
want to be people servants, but we want to serve people. We're there, I usually say that we're all people pleasers, which is true. But there's a joke where we're like, tell me really how you felt like you needed to appease your parents growing up and how you end up in the industry, because it's true. Like, we want to make sure everybody's happy all
Well,
the
we have the same for psychologists. We're like, "So what's your trauma?" Even though I'm not a clinical, everybody's psych undergrad, we're like, "So what's your trauma?"
But
Yeah.
it's true, right? Because but we enjoy that, right? Like, it is a lifestyle, and they are good, and they want to make a difference. But even the man on that, I'm not even talking about women, men, color. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about really the position at that point.
Mm.
The department heads, right? They have a hard time convincing their leaders, the people that actually are going to do the money, are going to reallocate money, and that what their team needs is different than what they're willing to give.
And
Like,
it's different than what it's been before.
yes, because before, and that's the thing too, right? Like, so the people that are making these decisions, majority of them are people who have been in the industry for a long time. They're like, well, people are just lazy nowadays. They just don't want to work. Like, no, they do. Everybody wants to contribute to society. That's not it. Is that you are stuck in the mindset that we had back in the day, where like Expedia was not even a thing, that you could not use like a third party to book, and people would just come to your hotel because they loved it. You have to understand that there is a difference now. And if you don't understand what your team wants now, you're just not, people don't want to work. And that's how it is.
So it reminds me of, I changed majors a bunch of times in college because I went to university after my life in a very small town and was like, I don't know what's going on. And, that's a whole other story of Anna figuring out a career as a redneck. But one of my first major was journalism.
At least you have your teeth.
Yes. My first major was journalism. And of course, like everybody was like, don't go into journalism because it's dying. Because the time that I went in was like the internet was just becoming huge and like papers were dying, but you could still get a paper copy. And, we were starting to get more into apps and not just browsers. And, when I hear anybody talk about now, well, that's just not how it used to be done, I think of paper versus radio.
Yeah.
Because radio, when TV came, figured out, okay, we need to switch from being the news. There are still news stations, but we need to play music. That's how we're going to survive. And that's how they did survive.
Yeah.
But paper was like, no. And the ones that didn't switch to having an online platform did not do well.
Yeah.
And so it's not, I think we have a fear of being wrong. We have a
Yeah.
fear of change. That's very inherent to human nature. And not every change is good. But there are very clear like shifts, like when the internet came out and now AI and, the industrial boom before that, we're like, it's not just to thrive, though I hope you do, it's to survive in your industry because other industries keep giving us new stuff and the world keeps changing.
Yeah. Well, I just do have to say that we are in
Yep.
time.
We knew we would.
We were going to do it, but we're hitting the 45 mark. So
Yeah.
I just.
So to sum it up, we went over some of Raquel's unwritten rules in the hospitality industry. We went over that, the best way to have the best culture is to talk about them.
The things that make you uncomfortable. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Seeking information that's different. Get out of your normal algorithm. Maybe use a private browser. Go to a library. how do you want to end this? I have a potential question for next time.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I think this, I want to invite people to actually, if you want to comment on it, even after, the post is up, the light was down, the video is still going to be up. So please comment on it. We're happy to, respond. If you agree, if you don't agree, why, this is, it's a conversation to help people think also differently, right? And how we can shift into a purpose-driven workplace and stop being just work. I hate that.
yes. So let us know in the comments or send us a direct message on what you would like to hear us chat about. I'm going to end with a question, if that's
Go
okay.
for it. Yes.
I didn't run this by Raquel, so y'all say your prayers. Because I'm thinking a lot of when I talk about unwritten rules, a lot of people say, well, that's just professionalism. And then I ask them to define professionalism. And I always get a different answer because nobody, and it's always a stuttering one too, because people don't really, there's not like a firm grasp on that. Because when you look it up, it's like, what's appropriate at work? And it's like, thanks, that's really vague. And so the question I want to ask is, why do we say professionalism instead of respectful? Like, why do we tell people to be professional and not be respectful here? So that's my question.
Okay.
And
Got it.
well, think about it and maybe pick up on it next week.
Yes.
So thanks to
Sounds good.
everybody who listened.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. All right.